You know, I always suspected that we would be hearing again from Thomas Mahler, the creative director of the Ori games and No Rest for the Wicked one day, but I never imagined that it would be this soon and over something so absurd. And that's exactly what happened last night. An absurd incident took place in which Thomas Mahler saw something that he found concerning, and so he asked a very simple question. What happened when he was asked this question? He was met with nothing but animosity, anger, hatred, and of course, a smear campaign from none other than Kotaku journalist Alyssa Mercante. The same Alyssa Mercante who is obsessed with various YouTubers, tried to sue and cancel so many innocent people, message people's wives, lie in her own articles, make things up about people all of the time just to get attention, and this time, she's going after one of the most reasonable game developers I've seen in a while. So we're going to go over this amazing conversation that took place in which Thomas Mahler smoked Alyssa Mercante as well as the other Microsoft/Xbox employee who was talking a bunch of smack about him while also trying to pretend to be reasonable. It's some of the most insane stuff I've read this week. Check this out from That Park Place, who break it down concisely. No Rest for the Wicked CEO Thomas Mahler teaches Kotaku senior editor Alyssa Mercante how making video games works after she attacked him as a D-head. By the way, there was absolutely no reason for her to call him names whatsoever. He is being a completely normal person and just trying to explain a situation that she tried to amplify. It's insane. Thomas Mahler, the CEO of Moon Studios, which is currently developing No Rest for the Wicked, gave senior editor Alyssa Mercante a quick lesson on how developing video games works after she attacked him as a D-head, and I do feel it's important for you all to know. This is not the first time that Thomas Mahler has been circulated in these discussions. Way back in May, That Park Place had an article about him as well. No Rest for the Wicked CEO Thomas Mahler rebukes consultant Alexander Brazy, who attempted to justify DEI hiring practices. Quote, "He was fired, and I reported on this because I thought it was an amazing display of honesty on Thomas Mahler's part for just coming forth and saying that DEI was a terrible idea, and that even though they did try to hire somebody to consult on this game, it ended up not working out because the person did nothing but cause friction." Thomas Mahler commented on That Park Place's video to explain this to them. "This person is not affiliated with Moon Studios in any way whatsoever anymore. We contracted him for a short stint and he was fired for bringing nothing but friction into our team, just FYI. And later on, he explains that he doesn't really hire consultants, so pardon me if I'm ignoring all your messages. I pretty much agree with what Jobs had to say about consulting," to which he provides a video from Steve Jobs. So in my opinion, it was inevitable that we were going to be hearing about Thomas Mahler again, because people on the other side who see such reasonable takes like this cannot let it go, and it will be in the back of their minds until they can seize an opportunity one day to go on the attack. Mahler's education of Mercante occurred in the wake of ex-user XINGENUE, implying she worked on Ori and the Will of the Wisps, which Moon Studios developed. She wrote in June, "Hey new folks, I'm Ray. I work in the gaming industry in UX R&D plus game production. I worked on various software and hardware for Xbox. I now work as an independent media producer and had the privilege of working on the Dota Internationals 2023 and other gaming media projects." Now, the way that she describes this does make it come off like she worked on these games specifically, but when I looked at the kind of work that she does, all I understood was that she does survey work and data stuff. She does like promotional stuff and marketing or whatever, but she never actually worked on the game. Now, she doesn't specifically claim that she did work on Ori, Will of the Wisps, but like clockwork, a bunch of lunatics on social media came to her defense and started saying, well, she did work on Ori. She said that she worked on it, and they're all trying to paint Thomas Mahler as a psychopath. And why is it that they're trying to do that? Because he asked a basic question. You see, this post was back in June, so there was no real reason for it to blow up. There is a reason that she was blowing up as a person, which we'll get into in just a moment, but all he said in response to that post she made was, "I'm the director behind both Ori games, and I don't know who you are and how you were affiliated with Ori." And that's because of the way that she framed her comment. She made it seem like she worked on these games. She didn't say it outright. But a post that describes what she does vaguely in such a way can easily make anybody skeptical. And so this guy was like, "I don't really recognize you ever working for us. Did you actually work for us?" Now, guess what? She responded, admitting that she worked with Xbox user research. She was the URA for global publishing during 2018 to 2020. Nice to meet you. Now, I'll tell you right now that this conversation is not all a bed of of roses. It does get very interesting, but he then responded, that could explain it. I didn't want to cause you any trouble. I just saw you posting that you worked on Ori and I had no idea who you are. Now, unfortunately, you won't be able to see all of these crazy comments that she made, except for a few screenshots that I have provided because she could not take criticism and immediately went protected. So whatever conversation people wanted to have, they're not going to get it. But that's okay because Alyssa Mercante, Kotaku's senior editor, bravely came to her defense, saying you're a D-head in response to Thomas Mahler saying that you should not be mean to people. It says that since you're calling people names online, I thought it was important to inform people that you never actually worked for Moon Studios and that you didn't ever directly engage with anyone at Moon. Always be nice to people, Ray, even those you disagree with. And this kind of statement aligns with the things that he said in the past, that when people were causing friction in his company, he removed them. And what's funny is that a bunch of employees tried to smear him in an article from years ago, trying to say that he was doing exactly what he's doing here, being a reasonable human being, telling people that they should be nice, telling them no, giving them constructive feedback. And these people cannot handle constructive feedback, which is why they go on the attack so much. This is the same thing he said earlier. He said that person doesn't work for Moon Studios and this person doesn't work for Moon Studios either. Now, in response to Alyssa Mercante's "you're a D-head," Thomas Mahler said, I don't really know who you are. Now, of course, there's no reason for him to know who she is, but she's like, maybe you forgot, and then provided a screenshot saying Mahler sometimes argued with the veterans that he brought in, and he changed his mind about the decisions they made and would overrule them. Mahler would also forget about agreements and then argue for the opposite to happen, and that impacted the work for multiple people. Multiple developers said. Now, when a normal person looks at a comment like this, they're thinking, well, there's really nothing in here that is damaging to the Moon Studios CEO. There's nothing in this picture itself that makes him look like a bad person. But maybe it's because Alyssa Mercante just hates men so much, and so when someone like her sees a man trying to take charge and change his mind about decisions, it screams patriarchy in her brain and she just has to lash out, but nobody else sees that as a problem. And he explains it when he gives her a huge comment in response. And it's one of the greatest burns in gaming history. I have to tell you right now, this guy knew exactly what he was doing when he says what we're about to read. Now, of course, you cannot see these people because one of them has gone protected, as I said, and then the other person has had me blocked since I first started talking about her way back in like April or May or sometime then. But he says here in response, "Hey Alyssa, you're apparently a journalist from Kotaku, so I'm guessing you haven't worked in actual game development yet." And that is so sad to be told as a gaming journalist from an actual game developer who has seen a great amount of success in this industry. Let me try to explain the thing you posted about, which I'm guessing was from that hit piece from a few years back. Now, hold on a minute. What is this article that he is talking about? Well, it is an article that Kotaku parroted and made a report on way back in March 18, 2022. That was a couple of years ago by Ethan Gach, of all people. Absolutely hilarious that Kotaku ran with this. Of course, they have to defend it. Now, the article in question specifically right here is from VentureBeat, and it says, despite its beautiful Ori games, Moon Studios is called an oppressive place to work. Now, this is the article that Alyssa Mercante and other journalists are trying to use against this guy to smear him, attack him, and make him look like an absolutely terrible person. But all you have to do is take a look at his work. The Ori games and the No Rest for the Wicked games are very cool games, and they exist as they do because the people that he worked with came together to build this project and bring it to life, and they succeeded in doing so because it's one of the most revered games on the market. Ori and the Will of the Wisps and its sequel I'm talking about, of course. Moon developers told GamesBeat that they found the studio's culture oppressive. These are former employees and current employees as well, who at the time had such a huge problem with Thomas Mahler, apparently, that they had to express it to the media, saying that he was oppressive, saying that he would be verbally abusive to them, saying that they would say inappropriate things through text to each other, all this sorts of nonsense that you would hear journalists talking about when it comes to games like Black Myth Wukong. Something similar happened there, and of course, Kotaku defended those allegations against the Wukong developers. Again, it's like clockwork. This is the exact same thing that we see so many times. These Kotaku journalists and other journalists like them, they make things up like this, and even though these things are not verified, they run with them years later. I'm sure they never expected him to take accountability for this, but here, the Moon Studios devs actually responded to these allegations. We don't believe the experiences suggested by our questions are representative of the more than 80 Moon Studios team members who are thriving and doing great work every day, nor do we believe they are representative of the experiences of former members of our team. In fact, we are very proud of our history of making people happy, advancing their careers, and contributing to their financial success. But basically, I've read through this entire thing. It's very much a nothing burger, nothing out of the ordinary, but you definitely have some disgruntled employees who had unfortunate things to say about the Moon Studios CEO and the workplace environment. Now, here's the interesting part. He says, let me try to explain the thing you posted about. He says, yes, I'm guilty of what's stated in that image, and that's okay because this is the normal creative process. We brought lots of veterans into Moon because generally great people want to get the opportunity to work on great projects, and that's our goal at Moon. We always set out to create the kind of games we'd love to play ourselves that fill some hole in the market because for some reason these holes haven't been filled yet. And so we're all incredibly passionate about what we do. With great talent comes lots of enthusiasm and passion, which absolutely leads to arguments because ultimately everyone is working hard on getting their vision into the game. So this is something that does happen in the creative process. Now, these journalists do not understand this because their only goal in life is to smear people they disagree with. But he says, but also everyone at Moon understands that we're working together as a team. So the point of these arguments is then to try to convince each other why this or that solution would be the best thing for the game we're making, and the best solution ought to win. This happens sometimes in game development. If you have a creative director who is passionate about his ultimate vision, sometimes you as an employee are going to be told no when you give the CEO or the creative director an idea. Not every idea is going to make it into the game because what you don't want to have in game development is a toxically positive environment. That is something that caused Concord to fail. Way too many ideas being implemented, not enough people saying, no, let's take a step back and think about this. And this is why you have games like that and why Ori and its sequel actually succeeded as video games. Because ultimately they stayed true to their vision even though they had input from multiple employees. He says most of the times the beauty behind these arguments is that everybody gets a chance to contribute, and more often than not the actual solution will be one that ultimately everybody contributed to because we're dealing with very complex issues all the time, and complex problems often also need complex solutions. So he's really trying to break it down here for Alyssa Mercante, who, as you can probably guess, does not respond positively to all of this. But he says it is often a chaotic process, but it's controlled chaos, and I think that word perfectly encapsulates what game development is all about. It's about controlling what chaos you do have in the creative process, because everybody in the creative process is potentially a creative. They all have creative and imaginative ideas. It's just that not everything is going to be implemented, and when people are told no, sometimes they're not going to be happy about it. Now, was it right for these employees to attack the creator of the game and to accuse the entire studio of being a toxic workplace? No, of course that wasn't fair, but he does acknowledge this in just a moment. He continues, and yes, absolutely every now and then I have to put my foot down and set the direction because I'm the game director, and ultimately it's my responsibility to ensure that everyone knows where things are headed and that decisions get made. And this is something that people should already know about. It's not rocket science. When you're in charge of something, the decision is yours at the end of the day, and perhaps entitlement comes into play when these disgruntled employees made such huge complaints about him. But he says, and yes, it has also happened that I agreed to a certain decision, play tested some more, and changed the direction after. Again, to me, this is a normal part of the process since things get clearer and clearer the more stuff gets implemented and the more we play and test. To me, all this is just how creative work happens. It can be painful, but my job, like any good director, is to understand what's going on and make sure the right decisions get made, even if some work might get rendered useless in the process. Bear with me, guys, there's just a little bit more here, but he really schools this lady on what's been going on. See here, even Miyamoto is guilty of that, and he provides a ZeldaDungeon.net wiki about upending the tea table, a phrase used to describe when someone, usually Shigeru Miyamoto, steps in towards the end of a game's development to suddenly and radically change its direction. But again, that is something that already happens. A few years back, we hired some folks that didn't really fit our culture, so we had to part ways with them, and then this article article happened. Wasn't a great feeling to see some ex-Moon folks talk badly behind our backs, but ultimately it just made it clear that these folks shouldn't have worked at Moon in the first place, and I hope they're happier now wherever they landed. So, from a business perspective, this man is saying that it's a good thing they're not there anymore because of the fact that they talked behind his back, that they went to these media pundits and started smearing him with their rhetoric, saying, well, he did this and he did that, and all they did was take minor criticisms and blow them up to make it seem like this dude was an incoherent psychopath who was screaming at everybody all the time just to get his game out there. But he says, I don't know why you're out here cursing out game developers and what your whole deal is, but I hope that gave you some insights into the creative process and its messiness and beauty. I hope you have a nice day. Yours, D-Head. So killing her with kindness, that's something that Alyssa Mercante and other journalists who are crazy absolutely despise. Somebody else pointed out how nice he was being. It's probably the correct decision for someone in your position, but man, you were way nicer to her than she deserves. And he says, I don't know her and I prefer to be nice to strangers. She's working in the industry, so she ought to know how these processes work. And I had a few minutes to spend, but apparently she doesn't know how it works because you had to explain it to her like she was a 5-year-old. And he says, I don't always win every argument either. I wish I would. So this entire situation can be broken down into people just misunderstanding the nice words that this guy was providing. They're just attacking and smearing him, and all he's trying to do is calmly and kindly explain what's been going on. And he even takes accountability for the things that he's said in the past and says, look, things can get rough during game development. Not everybody agrees. Not everybody is always on the same page, but ultimately we work as a team to get our product out there. And sometimes I have to put my foot down, but that's what any good businessman would do. That's what any person in charge who has any lick of sense would do. They don't let their creative vision get stomped all over by a bunch of people with ideas just because you don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. You have to stay true to your vision, even through the rough times. And that's what he's been trying to get these people to understand, but they refuse to understand any of it. You know why? Because they continue to attack him even after the fact. Now, unfortunately, Alyssa Mercante has me blocked, so this looks like a job for Stealth Roberts. And here we have Alyssa losing her absolute marbles over something that she lost control of, saying, I rest my case, claiming that gamers are harassing her and harassing the people that she's defending once again. And she says this is because a man who allegedly, by the way, this is very important that they say this because they can't actually prove it. And the only proof that they have is him saying, yeah, I did say those things. But she says allegedly fostered a sexist, oppressive workplace, decided to wrongfully, publicly accuse a woman of lying about her job history, which sent the army of chuds after her. And I called him a D-head for it. I'm sorry, at what point did Thomas Mahler wrongfully and publicly accuse a woman of lying about her job history? All he asked was a simple question. I don't know who you are and how you were affiliated with Ori. How is that an accusatory statement? Now, she accuses him of knowing exactly what he was doing, saying that he only did that because he wanted people to harass her, which is not something that she can prove. And really, it makes her look like a lunatic. And of course, he acknowledged right after. He's like, oh, that could explain it. Cool. I didn't want to cause you any trouble. I just saw you posting that you worked on Ori and I had no idea who you were. So it was just him trying to clarify. And so they're accusing him of being accusatory, which is nonsense, of course. And what really set these people off most likely is when he was telling them to be nice. Now, one thing that Alyssa Mercante and the people that she defends really hate is when somebody quote unquote mansplains anything to anybody. So if you're a man telling a woman to be nice and not call people names, you are obviously a patriarchal psychopath and need to be stopped by brave heroine Alyssa Mercante. Always be nice to people, Ray, even those you disagree with. Now, you may be wondering, what is it exactly that this lady has said? Well, you're not going to be able to see everything that she said, but I do have a couple of things that I found to be laughable, including a post from Grums that Park Place leads you to, in which this person said, the discourse is BS, shut the F up, a thread. Now, this was back on October 3rd, and this is when this person started to get a little bit more attention. DEI consulting companies don't bully studios into changing creative direction. They act as resources to help creatives portray a lived experience. The Northman is an example of this. Games aren't falling apart due to some conspiracy. They're falling apart due to insanely high interest rates and poor investment decisions. We're also in a recession. So those people who are ruining games from the inside out, pushing ideology into everything, they are not the cause of these games failing. Of course they're not. They never are. They're perfectly innocent. Now, looking at this, you may go, well, that's not really that big of a deal. But really, these people reveal who they are all of the time. All you have to do is take a look at their past posts. I actually quoted this because I was shocked that she would even say this. Bro, this is getting crazy, LOL. And she said, pretty sure he also compared DEI to the Holocaust, but that's also not my business. And this is her talking about the Moon Studios CEO. She's attacking him, smearing him. Nobody's saying anything about this. They're all like, oh, he was just being so mean and he accused her of not working on Ori, but which, by the way, she did not work on Ori. She did some data stuff and survey stuff, perhaps some promotional stuff for Ori, but never worked on the game. And I don't think anybody was claiming that she did claim that. I think that everybody was just confused, and now she's making a mockery of him and trying to make him look bad, even though he was extremely kind to her. Maybe it was just because he said, hey, you need to be nice, and she went crazy inside. How dare this man tell me what to do? But here we are. I love the Ori games, but it's sad how much of a giant unprofessional baby Thomas Mahler is. I mean, really, can you think of a more mature response that anybody on X or on YouTube would ever give somebody like Alyssa Mercante or anyone else? It's one of the most reasonable takes that I've seen on the internet, and they're acting like this dude's a professional crybaby who's throwing a fit. What in the world do they consider reasonable? What do they consider going over the top and out of bounds? These people are nuts. They're nuts for thinking things like this. This post right here from Kyle puts it into perspective. He didn't stoop to their level, LOL. If game journalism's cry bully cycle wasn't so typical, it wouldn't trigger pre-victim card screenshots. It's the woke cult side, so it's invisible to gaming shills though. Kotaku is so attention starved and IGN isn't far off. And I think that somebody else agrees with Kyle on this point. But again, this is not the only thing that she says to this guy. I mean, in response to his question about how she was affiliated with Ori, she responds immediately with a question about DEI, because of course that's in the back of her mind when she's talking to the CEO of Moon Studios. Oh, I have a question for you. Do you ever at any point feel Microsoft has shoved DEI expectations at you or pressured you? Let me ask you this. What does that have to do with the question that he just asked? I will tell you, absolutely nothing. That's because these people, all they're thinking about is how the Moon Studios CEO doesn't like DEI, fired his gaming consultant that he hired. They can't stand that fact because it goes against their narrative, and they can't stand that he talks about it. And because these journalists are so inept and lacking in the integrity department, they want to have access to people like this who smear and attack and make a mockery of actual professional people, which is why I'm going to show you this post that I feel aligns with what Kyle was saying. This is from J Viper. I think I figured out why Alyssa is going so hard at Thomas while she's totally in the wrong. She's white knighting for the Twitch streamer who even Alyssa now knows is lying. We know Alyssa has been trying to get her Twitch channel traction, and she works in trading access with her access journalism. She's trying to get in with that Twitch crowd, and we're witnessing it in real time. She's not completely stupid, she's conniving. She's trading what little journalistic integrity she might have left for access to Twitch streamers. Watch as she weaves that into that circle and does streams with them soon. So J Viper thinks that she's going to be on a bunch of Twitch streams soon because she's trying to build a Twitch following. Now, of course, this is just speculation, but it's still interesting nonetheless, and it paints a picture of virtue signaling to get a step ahead in the game, even if your virtue signaling is based on lies, a foundation of them, really. But that's something that Alyssa Mercante and other media pundits who defend her are all about. Virtue signaling, even if it means that their company goes down in flames, which is something that's been happening a while. I'm not sure how Kotaku is still standing after all of this time. Game developers like this guy, Thomas Mahler from Moon Studios, these are the people that we need in the industry. People who are honest, straightforward, and not afraid to say no to people because they care about their projects, and they care to the point to where they will have these huge walls of text for people who absolutely despise them and simply try to educate them with knowledge that they have gained from their work history in the gaming industry. These are the types of people that we should be listening to. These are the types of people that we should be asking questions for anything related to gaming. Not Kotaku journalists who have meltdowns over every little thing that people say and do. No, those people aren't willing to have a conversation. They just want to destroy the people who disagree with them. That's all that these people have been trying to do. Now, their goal is to silence this guy, but that's not going to happen. And by the way, it's pretty incredible that she got like 148 likes, and this post just ratioed the crap out of her post. 14,000 likes, almost 500,000 people have seen it. It's clear that many people are seeing through the lies of these so so-called journalists, and they're pushing back, and so is Thomas Mahler, and everybody is on board with that. So as a friendly reminder, the Ori games currently are on Steam. I think that one of them is on sale, and of course, No Rest for the Wicked is out and still in development for early access. They've got a chapter or two right now available for play, and they're working on more chapters for their games. So keep that in mind as you move forward, and remember that it's people like this that make me not want to black pill over the gaming industry. I know that the gaming industry is in flames and that there are a lot of titles out there right now that are being poisoned by people who don't play video games, don't care about them, or are more interested in pushing an agenda than anything else. Not everybody is trying to burn the gaming industry to the ground, unlike Sweet Baby Inc. No, some of these people actually care, they need to be supported, and they need to be pointed out so that people who actually want to play good games and spend their money wisely can find them. And these people on the other side, like Alyssa Mercante, they need to be pointed out and shown how hypocritical they are. I don't think that we should be attacking them all the time, but point out their stupidity, so that people can see them for who they really are. And then they can make an informed decision that will put their minds at ease at the end of the day. And that's all I've got for you guys in this video today. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you haven't had the chance to like it and share it with your friends, that would be awesome. And hey, if you're feeling ultra spicy, consider subscribing to my channel so that you're always up to date on what kind of thing I've got going on. I look forward to seeing you all in the next one. Later. Meow meow.